In a joking manner, Bello came and said, hey, Vince, you look like you're the only one that can date Lauren here at this experience. And Vince he was checking Bello. It wasn't even towards, she called him straight.
Yeah.
So he said, because the bitch tall? And then
If at the start of the show you had told me that Lauren and Nicole would be entangled, in a lot of connections, I would have said no. I would have said you're lying. I would have said you're talking about the wrong person, or maybe you don't know who you're talking about. So the idea that you had them tangled, Nicole in 3 couples doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. Or 3 different guys, I really am pleasantly surprised about that. And then suddenly we find out that Lauren and Darius are friends. Since when? Since when? Because I don't remember that friendship being announced on the show, so I'm pleasantly surprised about that. And for Darius and Ashley, am I surprised they broke up? No, I'm not. I know they've sort of hinted that they might rekindle, but I would suggest that they run in opposite directions. I really would. Bello and Dom, it was a matter of time. I said this before. I said there is that romantic spark, that sexual attraction, and when it wears off, that will be the end of the road. And suddenly, sadly, we're at the end of the road, and I am not surprised. Anyway, hey there, thanks for stopping by. It's your girl Valerie. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, click the like button, turn on the notification bell for when I upload new videos, and definitely leave a comment. In this episode, I'll be reviewing Ready to Love, Season 11, Episode 14. It's the reunion part 2. So we continue with Dom and Bello. They are in their feelings. Dom is lashing out because she is saying, this man really wasted my time. He had a girlfriend and he didn't want me to know that he had a girlfriend, so he blocked her on my socials, and he also couldn't provide for me financially. And it's like, Dominic, what do you mean he couldn't provide for you financially? I thought you had a business of your own. Why do you need him to provide for you? If he provides for you, that's a bonus. It doesn't need to be a necessity for you, because you don't have kids with him. You don't have any attachments to him. As far as I'm concerned, learn to be independent and let him, pay for you if he wants to. Because I don't get it. I even don't understand why Bello continued to pursue Dom, because Dom was used to a certain sort of opulence, a certain lifestyle. And so the idea that if he knew he couldn't afford it, he wanted to continue to explore that doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. His excuse is the fact that he says, she was too expensive for him, one, and also she couldn't have children, and her dad didn't accept his religion. And it's like, oh, this is nothing new. You should have said no on the final day. You didn't need to say yes. You could have easily said no, and that would have been okay. In regards to the children thing, I am side-eyeing him, because I did say before that if he wants more children, Ashley is his best bet because she's younger. Dom is older, and she's already said she's had a couple of miscarriages and is not open to sort of becoming pregnant. She's open to surrogacy, but she's not open to pregnancy. And so the idea that suddenly he is shocked by this doesn't make sense. Them using the religion, I don't get it. And then he complained that he took Dominic and her daughters out, and he spent about $600. And you're saying if he does that 3 times a week in a month, he'll have spent way more. So I get it and I understand it, and I don't understand why they needed to go out 3 times a week to eat and spend that money. Not even, rich people do that. But hey, if that's how they express love, good for them. We then had Devon. Devon, the problem is when he walked into the experiment, he really struggled with performance anxiety. He was really shaking. You could see him shaking. He could barely speak. And this is why the girls dumped him on day 1. And then whoever gave him a pep talk and brought him back must have told him to try and explore multiple connections. That way he could stay on the show. That's the impression that I get. And sadly for him, they showed the clip of him trying to kiss Dom, and Dom asking him, what are you doing? I feel like Dom kept him as a number to fight for her so that she wouldn't be dumped again. And she assumed she was doing the same for him. Didn't realize that he was catching feelings. I don't know how he expected to catch feelings for her. He and Nicole, I didn't quite understand that connection with Nicole. And turns out post-experience, they experiment, they continued sort of doing whatever they were doing, whether they were dating, whether they were being friends with Nicole, I don't get it. Things just erupted, and Nicole said, yes, we were talking after the show, and then suddenly I realized that he's an all lives matter people. And it's like, whatever his belief is, unless he's causing someone harm, there was no need for you to bring that up. Even everybody was questioning that, why is Nicole doing this? And people were sort of side side-eyeing her because this is way too many relationships for you to be involved in. She's already said that she's got a situation with Vince, which we all know has come to appear to be a lie because when Vince cornered her, she then sort of retracted what she said. And even when Devon cornered her, she sort of started backtracking and retracting some of the things she was saying, which makes me believe that on her part, I think all Nicole wanted was to be on the show. And because she didn't get airtime, she wanted to find a way of being a part of the storyline when she came to the reunion. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. On his part, you have Devon say, yes, he was open to exploring connections. His problem was he wasn't sort of strong enough, I think, to cut some of them off and was worried about the backlash of him not cutting things off. The ladies were saying that we ended up realizing that he was using the same playbook on all of us. And in the end, we were all fed up of it because he was, whatever he was saying to one person, he was going and saying to the other person and saying to the other person. Dom reveals that apparently he called her, his number one. And so it was really messy and toxic, which is really sad though, because I thought he was a very good guy, but sadly he was a bit misguided. Shannon said he was undecided, and this is why they had a problem because he couldn't pick who he wanted as a partner. You had Tommy sort of sit down with everyone and sort of have a conversation about, what was said in the pods and how it came out. Well, he brought out the main culprits, people like Christine, Lauren, Ashley, Darius, and you also had Vince there. And they sort of had this back and forth about the comment that Christine had said about, about Vince, saying Vince called Lauren a B word. And surprisingly, it took Darius to defend Vince, which is surprising because he said Vince didn't say it in a derogatory way. Vince said it as part of a statement of sort of whatever he was discussing with Bello, because Bello came in and said Lauren is very tall, so Vince is the tallest guy in the group, so he will have to date Lauren. And Vince responded and said, oh, just because I'm tall, so I'm the one you expected to date that B. And Tom even called him and said, oh, don't use that term when you're addressing female. We need to uplift each other. And he also said, when you hear it now, it's totally different from how it was sort of relayed to the ladies, because when you hear it in the context in which it was said, it wasn't derogatory. It wasn't something that anyone would have been offended by had they heard about it. But the way it came back is the problem. I'm surprised we didn't get to hear anything about Darius, because I expected us to address the issue between Darius and Vince, and suddenly you had Ashley speak up and say, well, I had a lot of guys come to me and tell me a lot of things. And it's like, what did they tell you? Tell us, what did they tell you? Because Tommy has always said what happens in the vault stays in the vault. So the idea that you're now covering up for your man and saying everybody else was regurgitating what they heard in the vault, I didn't understand it, and I'm pleasantly surprised that Tommy, on his part, he didn't sort of pressure her and try and understand what exactly was being said behind people's backs. We had Shannon come out with her men. She came out with her guys, and so her friend came out. I don't understand why her friend came out. Everybody else couldn't understand why the friend was there. So the friend sat down with Shannon and the guys, and she was saying, the problem was Devon, Darius, and Stephen, none of them was 100% committed to sort of picking Shannon and making her their number one. They showed the clip of, Stephen sort of consoling Shannon the day she was dumped and everything. And so for me, my issue is this. Shannon has way too many hats on at the moment. She's got degree after degree after degree, and it doesn't seem like she's settled in a career. So the idea that she wants to bring someone into that equation, to me, doesn't make sense. She needs to focus. She said she's been newly certified as a midwife. She needs to focus on her midwifery, at least for a year or two. Sort that out and make sure that she's sort of familiar with her work, and then she can bring in someone else. Otherwise, that would be too much of a roller coaster for her, given the fact that she appears to have some sort of neurological deficit, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, you did have Stephen say he's still open to exploring things with Shannon, because his biggest regret is he didn't sort of start earlier, sort of getting to know her and focusing on her. They both agree that they will try and give it a chance. I don't think they should. I really don't think they should. I think if they are, they need to give it a year. Take a break for a year and then come back. And if they're both single, then they can work at it. But at the moment, I think there's too many things going on that they will just be in the same toxic cycle and they'll never progress. We then had Stephen and his multiple connections. Stephen was in the same boat in the sense that Stephen had multiple connections and was being very superficial and sort of, I think, what can I say? I think he was very intentional with who he told, what he told. And because of that, this is why maybe he had a deeper connection with Shannon than he did with some of the other girls, because he was very superficial, I think, until he found his person. And Tom even said he was a slow burn. And it's like, buddy, if you're a slow burn, maybe this is not it for you. I think some of these guys would have made an amazing partner had they gone to something like Love is Blind, because then that is focused on one person, exploring a connection, picking your one person early and working on that connection with that one person to see if it works or not. Because I think there are multiple relationships that could have survived had it not been a way whereby they were intertwining connections. Finally, we get to find out about Darius and Ashley. Darius and Ashley, anyone surprised that they broke up? No. That was just a ticking time bomb. We were just waiting for the moment for them to break up, because at the end of the day, they were very sort of toxic and sort of I think there was a power struggle between the two of them, in the sense that Darius, because he's older, wanted to be the power, and he wanted to be the man, because his last partner, he was able to build her up from being a stripper until she owned her own business. And I think he saw Ashley as a project, and she didn't want to be seen as a project, and this is why they struggled. Yes, they said they're still open to trying to explore that. No, they need to go opposite directions, and keep walking. Don't even turn around or look behind you or over your shoulder. Keep going, because that connection, as far as I'm concerned, is very toxic and very non-functional. So I wish them all the best, but I hope they don't decide to sort of make a U-turn and come back to try and explore that. You then had everybody on the floor with Tommy, and Tommy sort of asked, are there other people that are still that are open to exploring connections, or that are exploring connections? Turns out, apparently, Christina went to a trick or treat with Xavier, and it's like side eye. Because at the end of the day, I think she did it because she wanted someone to look after her, not because she really liked that man. She said if he calls her again, she's open to going. But I think it's all about the money, money, money. Uh, with Vince and Nicole, there was a conversation about the relationship that they have and whether they're open to continue to explore it. I think the show is trying to give people hope that even if you don't work during the experience, after the experience, you can continue to explore with somebody that you've met in the experience. That's the impression that I get, because they don't want to be seen as a failure, because none of the couples were able to make it. But if there was a couple that I wish had been given an opportunity, I feel Donna and Vince should have been given an opportunity. They should have been given help to help them sort of reach an understanding of where they went wrong and try to explore that, because I felt they had the strongest connection in the experience as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, thanks guys for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Click on the link in my video to watch my review from episode 13, part 2 of the reunion, and we'll see you in the next season. Bye guys.